you will watch on this podcast.
Not bold enough to say that ketones can solve all these problems, but it certainly have shown really prominent preliminary results, has helped a lot of people improve their lives.
Changed my life completely. I mean, I couldn't even drive my car because I was asleep after lunch.
Because this affects a lot. A parent's habit affects a lot a child.
Yes, you can change your gene depending on your lifestyle. That has been proven, right? Because your gene is just a blueprint.
Welcome back to this Wellness Billion podcast, my friends. So nice seeing you again. So nice reading your comments as usual. If you're not subscribed, subscribe now so you don't miss the next episodes. Today, we're going to talk about 3 different topics again, because this podcast, as you may know, it's divided in 3 different sections, 3 different articles that we're going to tackle. And we have a special guest named Latt that I'm going to let Karim, my dad, introduce today.
Yeah, guys, hi and Happy New Year to all of you. The 3 main articles are about the latest on wellness. That's the first article. The second part of the podcast is about marketing of wellness, so how you can improve your marketing and how you can push it, relate to latest news on wellness that happened. It could be an event or whatever. And the third topic is about AI related human wellness and the reactions of people looking at AI. So I'm going to present Dr. Latt Mansor, where Dr. Latt Mansor is a leading expert in physiology and metabolism. He's renowned for his work in bridging cutting-edge science with real-world health solutions, with a PhD from the University of Oxford, focused on type 2 diabetes and metabolism, and also degrees from Columbia University and the University of Nottingham. Dr. Mansor brings deep academic rigor to his mission of optimizing human performance. Is it well presented, Dr. Latt?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introduction, and I'm happy to be back. I can say back, even though.
Because actually, we have a funny story with Latt. You guys don't know it, but we tried to record a few weeks ago, and we had a problem in the software. We couldn't record. I think we spent an hour or so trying.
About half an hour.
Half an hour. We went into the discussion, and then we need to redo that again. But Latt is super nice and accepted to come back to the podcast today, so he can transmit a bit his knowledge and share on these articles.
So Latt, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Then we'll jump on the first topic. So
sure.
What's your journey like?
So I was born and grew up in Malaysia, and I have always grown up thinking that I'm going to be unhealthy because I have my mom's side, which has a very high prevalence of diabetes and obesity, and I have my late dad who passed away when I was 17 because of stroke, and before that he had a heart attack. So growing up, seeing all these adults around me living an unhealthy lifestyle, I thought that is my outcome, the only outcome, because as a child, that's what you see, that's what you're exposed to, that's the only way that you think your outcome would be, right? But later on, when I went to university in Nottingham in the UK, I did an undergraduate in biotechnology. And as you all know, biotechnology is a very broad subject. So I study everything from microbiology to nutrition to physiology to animal science, plant science, microbiology, everything, right? So that was when I took an interest in metabolism, because I realized that we can shift our metabolism, we can alter our metabolism with healthy lifestyle changes. And that was also when I first started exercising, because I grew up overweight and I hated physical activities. And we had this conversation before, because somebody else here had a same sort of transformation, Yassine, right? So I started losing weight, and I lost about 20 kilos in about 4 months, and then I joined the gym during my final year in my undergraduate, and I continued that lifestyle and learning more and more new things about working out, about nutrition, and all of that. And when I moved to New York for my master's in biotechnology from Columbia University, that was when I started learning about pharmaceuticals as well. So during the course, I learned a lot about regulatory affairs, learning about clinical trials, And then I worked in a pharmaceutical company after my master's, specializes in cardiovascular medicine. And because my passion is in that sort of chronic diseases, because I see myself having the predisposition of developing diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So for me, it's more of I'm so this is a bit of a sense of a selfish sense of curiosity where I want to learn about the disease, but it's also a selfish motivation where I want to figure out the root cause of the disease and hence trying to figure out the solution. After working for the company for a year, I was inspired by the people in the company who are very, very smart, and they all have PhDs. And I decided to apply for my PhD in the University of Oxford, and specifically studying cardiac metabolism. So looking at the metabolism of the type 2 diabetic heart in hypoxia, which is low oxygen environment.
Yeah.
So I did that for 3 years, graduated in 2016, and went back to Malaysia, went back to Southeast Asia. I worked in Singapore for a bit, 1 year and a half, for a diabetes management program. Started my own company after that, ran it for a year and a half in Malaysia around health tech. And then I got introduced to this company, Health via Modern Nutrition, which was based in San Francisco at that time. And they needed a research lead. They needed a scientist to lead their $6 million contract.
Tell me something, Latt. How is the wellness in Malaysia?
The wellness in Malaysia, it's very mixed, because in Malaysia currently, apparently, I saw this statistics the other day, which I was very sad about. Malaysia apparently has the highest rate of obesity in Southeast Asia.
Wow, more than China?
In Southeast Asia. So
Southeast
between
Asia. Yeah. And how things are reimbursed in Malaysia? Are the Malaysian
So
reimbursed when they
there
have a
is
glucose
there is a
monitor?
Malaysian government, Malaysian healthcare, like a universal healthcare, that the government system would, allow people to have access to doctors as well as specialists. Obviously, because it's a public system, it's very backlogged. If you know what I mean, it's very crowded. If you want certain appointments, you might have to wait a little bit longer. But generally, yeah, the government healthcare program does help these chronic disease patients. But I think what's lacking is the awareness and information and education. Because growing up with my relatives all having diabetes, I have seen the stubbornness of them, one, getting into being adherent to the medication, and two, the stubbornness of them to change lifestyle. And then I got introduced to this company, which was based in San Francisco then, called Health via Modern Nutrition. And they needed a scientist to be a research lead and lead their new contract that they just got from the Department of Defense, a $6 million contract to use exogenous ketones to improve cognitive and physical performance in hypoxia, which is what I studied in my PhD. So then in August 2019, that was when I moved from Malaysia to San Francisco, and I've been here since for more than 5 years now, been leading all the research and clinical collaborations of this company using exogenous ketones to look at so many things. We started off by looking at performance first, like with athletes, endurance, cyclists, and then from then on, a lot of people, a lot of researchers, they started seeing a lot of benefits when you consume ketones directly. So we have so many research now that branches out into all these therapeutic diseases. Because how I see it, if a product can improve the metabolism of an athlete, of an elite population, if you bring it into a population that is metabolically dysfunctional, it should still have that benefit. Because either you are metabolically very fit or metabolically dysfunctional. It's all on the same spectrum. We are all humans and we all metabolize at all times. So what we have done now is we have invested our time and money in all sorts of areas. So we have a collaboration right now with Johns Hopkins looking at using ketones for sleep apnea. We have a collaboration with Duke, look at heart failure. We have collaboration with University of British Columbia in Canada, looking at appetite suppression. We've got collaboration with University of Pennsylvania, looking at colorectal cancer prevention. So and then we have also another collaboration with the Naval Health Research Center, looking at traumatic brain injury. So all these diseases are essentially not related at all, but deep down, it falls down to a form of energy deficit.
Yes.
So if you look at these diseases, there are cases, say, for example, I take example, a heart disease or heart failure. When you have blockage of the arteries or you have an obstruction where you don't have enough blood and substrates going into the heart, you have a deficit of energy. And as a result, the heart cells die or get damaged, and that affects your heart function.
Lack of oxygen, yes.
Yeah. So same thing. So ketones provide that energy. So traumatic brain injury, same thing. When you have a concussion, you get a dysfunction of metabolism in your brain, and your brain becomes less efficient in utilizing glucose.
And this can lead to diabetes, what we call diabetes type 3, which is Alzheimer's or any
dementia and Alzheimer's and neurodegenerative diseases. That's correct. If you have a traumatic brain injury, you have a higher risk of developing neurodegenerative diseases later. So again, all of these common denominators is essentially metabolic dysfunction and energy deficit, which to a certain extent ketones can help. But I am not bold enough to say that ketones can solve all these problems, but it certainly have shown really prominent preliminary results that has helped a lot of people improve their lives.
Experience shared with you, Latt. I started my ketogenic personalized diet about 4 years ago. It changed my life completely. I mean, ask Yassine, I couldn't even drive my car because I was asleep after lunch. I was having nearly a collapse after lunch because I was not processing sugar properly. And after I started my ketogenic diet, I reversed type 2 diabetes that I have. I reversed hypertension, and I gained so much energy out of the ketones I was producing because I was at the same time I'm still doing the intermittent fasting, sometimes for 24 hours, something for 36 hours. And that's the 16 hours peak when you start producing ketones on your own. And I can imagine that having ketones as an additional, substrate or to giving your body more power to just regulate whatever you just proposed, whether it's in the heart cardiovascular part, whether it's a brain part, whether it's in the colon part, is a plus. Certainly, is a very high plus.
That's a really great point you pointed out, Karim. I want to quickly address the difference between a ketogenic diet and a ketone supplement. So a ketogenic diet, you're producing your own ketones called endogenous ketones.
Yes.
Exogenous ketone, it's an external source you can directly drink to increase your blood ketone levels. Now, what you pointed out on ketogenic diet and reversing diabetes and reversing high blood pressure, that is a very important point, because some of these diseases may only be improved with a total switch of a lifestyle and total switch of diet, which in your case, that is very useful, because while drinking ketones may help your heart function better and all of that, it may not reverse insulin resistance that you already developed. For example, you need to actually cut out sugar and let your body recover and let your body adapt to that lower level of sugar, so that your pancreas beta cells is not overworking by compensating and secreting extra insulin in order to control your sugar. So that's the difference there. And I think it has a place for exogenous ketones to supplement those kind of lifestyle, but also supplement the ketogenic diet as well. After this, by the way, any one of you please WhatsApp me your address. I'll send some products for you to try too.
Oh, I would love to try them. I was going to tell you that because
Yassine, you can take it half an hour before workout. Karim, you too. But Karim, since you are on ketogenic diet, you would know how it feels when your ketone levels increase.
Oh, That's cool because I
Yeah.
control my blood sugar and I control my insulin resistance, and we develop a product to be able to monitor glucose on a non-invasive way. I hope in probably 2 to 3 months I will be able to announce a worldwide announcement, and that will let us work together with your company. Us providing our clients with your ketogenic supplement, and you providing your clients with the way of non-invasively control the evolution of their sugar, having their ketones helping out the whole process.
That's super interesting. How do you measure non-invasive blood glucose?
It's
It's a trade secret for now.
no. We use very deep tech because I'm a deep tech guy. We use I would say we cheat a little bit compared to other people because we use quantum computing simulation, which is very rare by different companies that focus on AI mainly. We do those simulations to find out the right substrate to put on the skin to be able to access to the glucose level, and also we analyze the spectrum
Yeah.
that we need to use, and we also use some biomimicry.
Yeah.
We
Yeah. Yeah.
biomimic through 2 or 3 species that exist in nature to be able to find out the right value to track and the right way to track the value. It's still under a little bit of secret, but the technology is here, and it will be
That's great to
open
hear.
for partnership with our partners that will use it for to help out their business thrive with this non-invasive device for their
That's
clients.
great. That's great. That's great. Because we are partnered with a clinic system in America here, to help people lose weight. So those people would include people with obesity and people with diabetes as well. So I'm sure amongst those populations, there will be people who do not want to poke themselves every day to check their bloods,
Exactly.
and their blood glucose. But one thing to note as well, as you get the product, the Ketone IQ shots, once you drink it, you will also notice that your blood glucose will drop. So
Oh,
keep monitoring that, because some of our colleagues who are more prone to hypoglycemia,
your hyperglycemia
they feel the cold, they feel the
and
shivers,
the
and then
dizziness. Yeah.
then they have to top up a little bit of sugar. But for most people in the modern society where we eat so much sugar, that is a good thing. You know what I mean?
Drained by sugar.
Yeah. So for you who are on a keto diet, so I want you to monitor your sugar. If you have a continuous glucose monitor, that
I
would be
will
great.
certainly do it and give you the marks and give you the results. I'll be your, I would say, cobaye in France. In France, we say it says I'll be a student of, I'll be a tester.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first topic is around health and wellness. What you eat could alter your unborn children and grandchildren's genes and health outcomes. The 3 points are: epigenetics refers to shifts in gene expression that occur without changes to the DNA sequence. Studies found that the famine caused epigenetic changes to a gene called IGF2 that is related to growth and development. Through relatively simple lifestyle modifications, people can significantly and measurably influence the gene of their children and grandchildren.
Yes, 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 yes. So let's dive in, Lat, with your deep dive into metabolism and the ketogenic diet. Do you think swapping carbs for buttered everything might tweak our genes in a way that we leave your future generations thanking us?
I think in terms of, so this topic is has always been more on the controversial side, right? Because yes, you can change your gene depending on your lifestyle. That has been proven, right? Because your gene is just a blueprint. That's why people talk about you having an increased risk of certain diseases if your parents have them, right? So because you have that sort of blueprint that increases your risk, you changing your lifestyle will either turn on or off that gene. So you have the promoter, you have the inhibitor of the gene expression. Now, whether you changing that promoter, to me, the way I understand genetics is that the blueprint is still the same. Will you changing it change the blueprint and therefore affect your children and grandchildren? I'm not entirely sure, but I surely can agree to the fact that there are certain things that you can do with your lifestyle changes, with your habits, with your diet, nutrition, all of that, to reduce or increase the risk of diseases depending on your genes.
Yassine, what do you think?
I agree with the fact that whatever a parent is eating is going to affect the child. I mean, for example, when a woman is pregnant and you're craving something. I'm going to give my personal example. My mom, when she was pregnant for me, she was craving this kind of mashed potatoes with ketchup, and she was eating that a lot. And when I was growing up, I was loving mashed potatoes with ketchup. And I was like, okay, well, now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, what is this dish? Like, how come did I love this thing while growing up? And this is the effect of my mom eating that while she was pregnant from me. And I strongly believe that the habits of parents, not only before but also while raising the child, it's kind of maybe not affecting the gene in the inside, but affecting the mindset, and then
It's a habit forming.
Exactly.
And lifestyle. Same thing like when I talked about my background earlier, right? Because I'm surrounded by people with diabetes and obesity. For me, I automatically think that is what I'm going to become, and therefore I'm also leading the lifestyle that leads to that outcome. And I agree with you in the sense that the mother carrying the child may have a more prominent effect with the things that she eats and things that she does. But my question then is, what about if it's not just carrying the child, right? If it's your dad doing something 10 years before he had you, would that have effect on you?
I think so.
I have a very strong opinion about this because I've been studying. And by the way, our company is called, our biotech group is called Epineon. And Epineon comes from epigenetics, and our metabolic product is called Epi by itself. This is because we love the notion of epigenetics. And I digged very deep into the concept of epigenetics, and I found out that your dad gives you 50% of his gene and your mom gives you 50% of the gene. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
What happens is when you're born with this gene, the magic of it is that it becomes only 20% of your whole ellipse genetic codes, because the 80% is your epigenetics. And what is your epigenetics? Is the fact that this protein, this continuation of genetics is opening and closing proteinic doors into your initial gene that you inherited from your parents. That doesn't mean that if your father gives you the gene of being diabetes type 1, you won't have diabetes type 1, or you can reverse it, but that's very, very difficult to reverse and nearly impossible. But that means that in conditions where it's reversible, your epigenetics, which is your way of life, what you eat, what you think, where you live, what you breathe, whom you're with, I mean, your education, everything builds out your opening and closing your initial gene and makes you have a new genetic codes that you hand off to your children. And when you said, what if your father was having, let's say, a life that built some diseases and he gave part of it to you, I think if it's reversible, you can reverse it through your epigenetics. And that's the magic of this ellipse, because at the end you say, okay, nothing is put it in a marble, graved in a marble. You can, through a good lifestyle, a good way of handling things around you, good way of handling stress, you could reverse some conditions that are reversible. And you'll be prone, let's take cancer, for instance. Imagine your father or mother is prone to cancer, to a certain type of cancer. Your genetics will probably play a role. But you can, you know better than us, Latt, that cancer is something that is dormant, and you wake it up by having some I mean, one day or another having some trouble with stress or anything else. But you can still keep it dormant if you have a living that keeps it dormant.
You're right in some points. Yeah, I agree. I agree in some points, but I still disagree in some other points. I mean, the point that you said, which is very, very, very important, that people need to understand, and it's not only about health or whatever, but it's about like you can reverse your genes. You can reverse the way you were meant to be born or meant to be lived or whatever because of your parents' habit as well. Because this affects a lot. A parent's habit affects a lot a child. And this we're not going to change, and this is happening today, and studies actually shows as well that parents' habits affect the child. Now, it's true that regardless of the parents' habits, a human can change their genes, can transform completely. Like Karim, you're the example. You changed in 4 years completely the way you were eating. And this affected a lot the way you were living as well. Like you said at the beginning, you were right after lunch. And I remember when I was having lunch with you, you just like slept. I was talking to you and you were starting to sleep. And that was like so weird. Sometimes it was scary because your eyes were like playing around and I was like, okay, what is happening right now? Like, this is so weird. But you reverse thanks to the nutrition. And this can happen to a child as well. It's just about then understanding the environment and changing habits to be able to change as well, change your genes as well.
Yeah. And I think let's not confuse between the two things, right? One is essentially, like I said, doing certain lifestyle changes that change the expression of the genes. And two is the genetic code by itself, right? Because the genetic code is essentially made out of nucleotides and the DNA. And what is passed down to you, it's basically set. But what you can do to affect the expression of it and the translation into the different proteins, that's what can be changed. So that's why I am still skeptical about the changes that someone can make to the genetic code on its own, in and of itself, as a blueprint to be passed down to children. Maybe part of that quote unquote passing down is actually the knowledge of dealing with your gene that is already at risk of a certain diseases. Therefore, you've learned throughout your lifestyle and your nutrition that you know how to deal with this, and therefore you're passing down that lifestyle and also the knowledge onto your children, and therefore affecting how he is expressing that gene that may bring risk to develop that disease. And so we should not sort of confuse the effect of that versus the passing down of the gene, if you know what I mean. I'm just breaking down the science of what we know so far with we think rationally or logically could happen.
Yeah, you see, you said something very interesting because you speak about yourself as a man. You have a woman, you have a wife, and your wife also counts in the transmission of the genetics for your kids.
Yeah.
So you both of you implicated into that transmission of genes. And that says that it has to be done through your epigenetics, opening and closing protein doors, and your wife's also epigenetics, opening and closing protein doors. And what happens is that the conjunction of both of you will determine the type of DNA that your kid can have.
Yes.
And this is when people get to know it and work by it, which means work on themselves by it. I think it can have some magic. We could like start.
Like I said, I'm not disagreeing that the lifestyle changes, the certain things that you can do to affect the expression. So you need to understand the expression of the gene is not the same as the gene code itself, right? Yeah. So like you may have a certain gene that increases your risk, but the expression may be decreased because of certain things that you have done.
Yes, but it's all about your actions and how you behave, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's all about you are.
But what you pass down onto your children is the code.
Absolutely.
So not
Totally agree.
necessarily the ability to express it, if you would,
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
unless
like if
you
you're passing to
practice.
your kids a painting that he can modify a bit during his life because it will be done with a certain paint that he can modify. So the painting is fixed, but then your kid can modify going along the way and pass it to his kids with his wife to his to his kids himself. We could also work on start like a global movement promoting epigenetic nutrition, whereas the dad and the mom together are focused on personalized dietary recommendations. And not only for individual health, but for optimizing genetic outcomes across the generations.
I think either or. I mean, epigenetic is a very large field that a lot of people are still really heavily researching on. So either way, whether your understanding or my understanding or our argument is true, we do agree on one thing, which is lifestyle changes does affect the probability of us developing certain diseases. And therefore, what people should take out of this, while we are still figuring out in the scientific community what's going to be passed on to the next generation, we know for a fact that there are things that we can do in order to avoid certain diseases, especially the preventable chronic diseases. So I think that is the main point that people should take home.
As a tech guy, I mean, we could even develop AI tools that analyze family health history, your nutritional habits, for instance, and your epigenetic biomarkers to offer personalized nutrition strategies. That's what we do, and those strategies would aim to improve the intergenerational gene expression. And we could also, another idea is that we would integrate the epigenetics into school curriculums and prenatal care programs to educate future parents on how their diet and lifestyle choices can shape the health of their children and grandchildren, maybe.
Well, let's dive into the second article, which is, it's more related to. I mean, it's related to marketing, as you may know, and in health, we can as well link it to the first article that we just talked about in some way. And this article, the title of this article says, "Ketones will fuel the next generation of energy drinks," say ex Pepsi and Co. Executive behind Key. As Egg Founder leads $4 million seed round, he's the reach lead for ketone drink. The three main key points says, "We truly believe that ketones are the new protein, so the presence of ketones won't be a differentiator ultimately, but rather the brand and product concept." Co-founded by two former executives from Coca-Cola and PepsiCo, Karishma Hawani, Keklabak, Key's mission is to help consumers take sugar out of their diet while reinventing the $20 billion energy drink category with more enjoyable, science-backed options. The caffeine gets you up and the ketones keep you going. Adding the L-theanine and caffeine from green tea in the right ratio also helps provide mental focus. Personally, this is big. This is big. This is very dangerous. And this is going to be very complicated, in my opinion. In my personal opinion, I think it's tackling an enormous, a gigantic industry which needs to be tackled, which people understand, but which will need lots and lots and lots and lots of funding to be able to defend. What do you guys think?
Well, I would say, well, this is for Latt, by the way, but we can also ask ourselves if, I mean, all energy drinks often spike blood sugar, and the new elections in the U.S. brought up Kennedy to the healthcare strategy, and I think it's a very, very good thing for such an announcement, having ketones in the energy as an energy drink, as talked about it. So as the energy drinks, taurine and so on and so forth, spike blood sugar and stress the body metabolism. So my question to you, Latt, is how can ketones-based alternatives reverse this trend to improve longer-term metabolic health for active consumers?
So first of all, before I address that, I want to say that it's great to see that people like them who are ex-Pepsi and Coke would come out with a quote healthier alternative. And even though they just came out last year, they actually use the similar ingredients as we do. And we came out in 2022 and they use the same manufacturer as we do as well, as I was reading the article. So, when people are copying you, especially people who have been in the industry for a while, you know that you're doing the right things. So that's a great compliment to us what we're doing. One big difference between ketones and caffeine is that caffeine is a stimulant. Ketone is not a stimulant. So a lot of people, when we first started selling ketones, we need to educate people that it does give you energy. What most people are accustomed to when you talk about energy is caffeine. And I want to reaffirm them, or I had to reaffirm them, that ketones does not keep you up at night. You can have ketones even later in the day and it would not affect your sleep because it is not a stimulant. Caffeine works directly in your brain and blocks the adenosine receptors so that you do not feel fatigued. So that's the difference. But what happens then if you mix ketones and caffeine for performance, which is what one of our product line is? We have ketones and caffeine in a drink. I personally don't drink that product often because I am very caffeine sensitive. So if I take too much caffeine, I get headaches. So I prefer having the ketone energy in and of itself. But if you have caffeine and ketones, what happens is then you are stimulating yourself. So you're upregulating your adrenaline, noradrenaline, you're upregulating your cortisol, you're upregulating your heart rate, you're upregulating your blood pressure. But since you're upregulating metabolic rate, you also need the fuel to come from somewhere. And ketones is a much better fuel than overloading yourself with sugar. Because if in the older versions of caffeinated drinks or energy drinks, you have a shitload of sugar, you have a shitload of caffeine, and people just go crazy. And even if they didn't have ADHD, they will develop ADHD after that.
Sure. Yeah, but let's okay. Take caffeine apart. What about taurine, Latt?
Taurine, I don't know that much. I know that a lot of these energy drinks do contain taurine. Honestly, I haven't looked that much into that ingredient itself because we don't have any taurine in our product. So I don't think I'm expert enough to comment on that.
What do you think, Yassine, about taurine? People are getting those energy drinks filled with taurine.
As well, I'm not an expert in that field, and I know it's not very healthy kind of supplement to have in an energy drinks. Energy drinks are not healthy, anyways. Like pure energy drinks that we see in the market, that we buy in supermarkets on the streets, and all we know that they're not healthy. But talking about taurine, I wouldn't be able to dive deep into that. How about you?
Well, I'm telling you something. As far as marketing is concerned, when you sell a product, I believe people want immediate results. It's like when you compare someone who is going to do a very long diet compared to someone who is going to do surgery operations to take out this part of this obesity or stretch his stomach, which gives a very certain and fast result. What happens with those drinks? I used to drink some of them. It has immediate result. I mean, you see it on the long term.
Yep.
I would say that being a ketogenic diet on all day long, I would say that ketones gives you energy, but not as fast as you may have this energy done by a super taurine or caffeine or a sugary drink, because the reaction is nearly immediate. And that's the difference, because when you are in a bar or in a coffee shop or wherever, I mean, you drink it, you feel good right away. When you drink ketones, it needs probably more time, or other types of drinks. And the whole marketing is on the immediate effect of it. And I'm very sad that it's like that, because it's
That is
full
such
of
a great
crap.
point. That is such a great point. Because I think that is the problem with the supplement industry, right? Because a lot of supplements you have to take for a long time. For example, like I don't know, like multivitamin or whatever. You take it every day, you don't really see any difference, you don't feel any different. But if you do your blood work every 6 months, you may see some sort of, numbers difference. But then you get people who are in energy drink, billions of dollars sort of market, you get the immediate effect, and people keep piling on more and more and more stimulant so that people get faster and bigger effects without really considering the detrimental effect it has on health and the diminishing returns that people have. And as a result, like when I moved here to America, I realized that some people can't function without at least 4 cups of big Starbucks coffee per day. I couldn't even handle half a cup because of my caffeine sensitivity. So one point to your point, Karim, on the ketone drink. That's why I can't wait for you guys to try our product, because within 15 and 20 minutes, you will feel the difference. But it's not the same jittery feeling and difference that you feel with a caffeine drink. It's a much more subtle but increased focus sort of feeling. So that's why we have been so successful in the past few years that we've marketed this product, because when we first came out with it, the original one, it does not taste good, right? I don't know if you've tasted ketone esters. Ketone esters taste worse, but ours is an improved version, but it still doesn't taste good. The only reason why we managed to grow it like 3 times in the first year is purely because of the immediate effect, because people feel it, they feel the difference, they feel productive, and then they know that it is not due to stimulant, but in fact it's due to a chemical, a molecule that your body already produces naturally. So it's not something synthetic that is blocking certain receptors or modifying your metabolism pathway. Instead, it is a direct molecule that your body can produce and also use for metabolism for energy.
Yeah, yeah. I think the clients of those products are getting more and more aligned with healthier options, and the global media is also pointing out that let's say the United States is a very high level sugared dieting. There is everywhere. And I think there is a place to develop smart ketone drinks tailored to individual metabolic profiles. Like in EPI, we are addressing a questionnaire to know the metabolic profile of the person, or to get to know some more of the metabolic profile of the person. And this leads to different metabolic types. And I think using wearable glucose monitor like ours in the future could help. And those AI algorithms could recommend the right ratio of ketones and probably caffeine, if you want add a caffeine in it for optimal energy and also focus.
Yeah.
And also we could also combine ketones drinks with emerging technologies like VR, AR, productivity tools to offer holistic focus and flow for the brain. This package would aim that knowledge workers, students, and athletes would be probably interested in such an approach.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yasin, you were going to say something?
I was gonna say that we were actually talking about it yesterday with Karim. It's about the instant gratification problem that we have today. Taurine today, when you drink an energy drink and that has taurine, you have this instant gratification. You're drinking that drink and you feel like, oh wow, I have like a peak of energy. Like let's do many things. So that's the problem of today's society as well, is that we need instant gratification. If it's not working right now, no, never mind, I don't want it. It's kind of the same as, for example, one of the most researched supplement, which is creatine. People are taking it for like maybe a week or so, and they say, oh, there's no result, I'm going to stop taking it. But then when you keep on taking like for a long period, that's when you see the results. And it comes back to the problem of like instant gratification. We want things now. Everyone wants things now.
It's very skewed.
Exactly.
The reality is so skewed that people do not understand that our bodies, human bodies, do not work at the same pace as social media, even though social media is where they see most human bodies. But human bodies work very differently. It needs time to develop certain habits to develop certain adaptation, and therefore from the adaptation transforms into certain results that you're looking for. As in Karim, you've dealt with your own metabolism and your own health transformation. You know how long it takes and how much consistent work that it needs in order for you to see even little results. But once you see it, it keeps going, right?
Oh,
so
certainly.
it's that's the problem that people don't get, because anything that is fast, that is instant gratification, that's given to you, it's also instant disappointment. Because once it crashes, once it goes away, you either top it up or you risk being disappointed. And that's where the addiction, that's where they keep you going for, that's their model, that's their business model. That's
Absolutely.
where they keep you coming and buying their product, or
Absolutely.
you just risk get not feeling good, because now you're not relying on your body, now you're not relying on your natural mechanisms, but instead you're relying on a product. It's barely keeping you on for like a day. And that is such a
what they're sending you effectively is a dopamine trip.
Exactly. And it's such a slippery slope, because yes, you want to feel good, and it is good for that time being, but you need to recognize what feels good from the inside out.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you a question about this.
Okay.
You know
Keto
what
scan.
it is? This is a ketone evaluator. I mean, you evaluate your ketone by
Yes. Ketone breath.
your ketones level. Okay. What do you think of such a product, Latt?
I think the product is great for beginners. For beginners who just started keto diet, that's great, because it measures your acetone from your breath. So acetone, there are three main ketone bodies that our body produces: beta hydroxybutyrate, acetone, and acetoacetate. The main form that is circulated around the body in your blood and used for energy and metabolism is beta hydroxybutyrate, or BHB for short. Okay,
Yes.
but they are interconvertible between BHB, acetoacetate, and acetone. When you have an extra, when you have excess of ketones or beta hydroxybutyrate, you will produce acetone in your breath, and that's where the fruity smell, smooth, fruity breath that most people who are on ketogenic diet have. The problem with this method of measuring is that over time, as you develop keto adaptation and your body becomes more and more efficient in maintaining BHB form, instead of converting it into the byproduct of acetone and releasing it in breath, your body will be much better producing and using beta hydroxybutyrate, which means you will start to see less and less acetone in your breath. And then you may think, oh, I'm going into less ketosis now. I'm failing my keto diet, whereas you are actually getting more efficient in your keto diet. So that's the same with the pee strips, where you measure your urine, where most of the measurement is on the acetoacetate that gets released in your urine, instead of beta hydroxybutyrate in your blood. So I would always, if you want the accurate level of ketones in you, you should always measure beta hydroxybutyrate in blood.
Oh, okay. Okay. Very, very, very interesting.
Well, let's dive directly into the third article.
This is the third article. So it's about the wellness of humankind in the era of AI. As you know, humanity may reach singularity with just 6 years. That's what the trend shows. On average, it takes a human translator roughly 1 second to edit each word on another human translator. Today, that number is just 2 seconds for a machine or translated suggestion. Translated AI will be as good as human produced translation by the end of the decade, and even sooner, and we noticed that. And this is the first time ever that someone in the field of artificial intelligence did a prediction on the speed of singularity. So let me tell you about this singularity thing that a lot of people are afraid about. singularity has a very simple definition. I mean, it refers to a point where artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence, leading to rapid and predictable advancement in technology that could fundamentally change humans' life. And that's the purpose of my book, Renaissance Now, that digs into the goods and the not so good sides of the advanced AI, which is nearly singularity, and advance of quantum computing in that regard. And this article highlights how technological advancement, particularly in AI translation, as an example, are accelerating towards singularity. I mean, singularity is no longer a distant, hypothetical, but a measurable trajectory with AI model reasoning like human capabilities in tasks like translation or calculation, mathematical calculation, or even text writing nearly perfectly, like analyzing a text and giving creative ideas about it. We should take care of the way. I mean, I was reading a study about 2 days ago. It was an EY study about upskilling in the enterprise. And this EY study was saying that people are as surprised positively by AI as they are stressed by it. And the level of stress and the level of surprise is nearly 80%, whereas the level of stress is also 80%. So you have an equilibrium about this surprise stress thing. And in my book, I say that AI is a what did I call it? This has had to be recorded again. Yeah. And in my book, I say that AI is a schizophrenic technology. Because whereas you think you're using AI in your company to do a report or a fantastic and note about what you are analyzing and so on and so forth, I mean, the HR department is nearly firing you because they don't need you anymore. So that won't be maybe today, but it'll be sooner than we think, because we're still in a corporate environment where you have other inputs to be able to analyze your capability to develop anything. But I think this will bring in the 5 years to come, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5. When I say 5 years to come, is the 5 years is the last mile. In this 2025, it will bring a lot of stress to humankind. I mean, you're living in California, Latt. You know that you have autonomous taxis now all over. You have a lot of autonomous things happening around you. There's some that you see, some that you don't see. We see those humanoid robots coming over, and as they are humanoid, they look like us. So we're really facing a sunken to non-human, digital kind of human. And this
Actually,
brings a
I
lot
have
of
a robot right here just cleaning and cooking right now.
you see,
No, I'm just kidding. I wish.
maybe soon, sooner than you think. So, what do you think, Latt, of this effect in the health of people, uh, in the health in general,
I think
and wellness in particular?
I think I'm weird in the sense that I'm a scientist, right? So I've always been on that side of things where I'm always curious about new things. I'm always excited about new things. And I have always lived in all these different countries. So I'm always up for new adaptation and assimilation, right? So for me, I'm excited to see what's to come. I think a lot of stress and fear comes from the unknown. If you are not in the area, if you're not in the field of research, then you will know less, and therefore you are more susceptible to all these conspiracy theories, and you're more susceptible to misinformation, and therefore it builds up stress. So I'll take an example. When I was studying my master's, for example, in 2010, more than 10 years ago, we were talking about cloning, we were talking about genetic modification. That was such a stressful time for most people. They're like, you can't do that, you're playing God, you can't edit genes out. What are you doing? You're going to create chimeras, you're going to create mutants, and we're going to have X-Men in 10 years. But if you're in the area, you're like, do you know how hard it is to manipulate the DNA? Do you know how long it takes to do PCR, all these techniques? And it's very manual labor, and it's, doing pipetting and more mundane than you think. So I think it's important for us to really know where we are in terms of the advancement and the technology that we are today versus what could possibly be if we get taken over. I think we need to separate that, and therefore once you figure that out, and then you know what's actually possible versus what is just one of many possibilities that is not even potentially true, then you cut out that stress a little bit more. And I do look forward to, I think recently I read an article about AI being a little bit, just like 2% more accurate than an actual doctor in diagnosing a disease, which I find quite interesting. And I think it can certainly lessen the burden of the healthcare industry in general, and make sure a lot more people have healthcare accessibility. But I think the problem here in America is the accessibility is not blocked by not having enough doctors, but it's actually blocked by the expenses of healthcare, which is astronomically high, and being get kept by all these insurance companies. But that's a different issues, and that's a whole different discussion we can have of the recent events that happen in the US with the healthcare, United Healthcare CEO and all that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a world to discover here, and there's I'm going to repeat myself like I do in every single podcast, saying that AI is good, but we need to know how to use it, and we need to know how to benefit from it to be able to grow and to make more things and to make things faster. And personally, regarding this article, which is talking about translation, this is huge. This is huge personally for me, because if I want to tackle different countries in my content or whatever, I could do it for a fraction of the price of what a human translator would cost me, and that's a game changer. That's a huge game changer, and we need to know how to use it. Obviously, today it exists. It's not perfect, but it exists, and I think that it's only the beginning of a great technology that's going to be implemented.
And I think 100% we need a lot more regulation around it. But in order to regulate certain new technologies correctly, or regulate it appropriately, we need the regulators to actually understand the technology. And that's where the disconnection comes in, right?
Yeah,
Because
that's the subject of my book. But let me tell you something, Latt. I want to come back to your conversation when you were saying that when you were advancing in science and genes and all these scientific endeavors, and that would change the world, and we were kind of frightened was what was going to happen. The difference here is a total different game, because you have people at 14 years old and even 12 years old with AI at their fingertips, and they can produce outstanding codes to make outstanding things, whereas good or bad things with these codes. And this is at the fingertips of everybody in the world, not only the scientists that are behind the laboratories of the universities per se, but everybody. Realize that today the level of coders has completely been swiped by another level that they have to reach, which means that a lot of coders are out of job because they don't code anymore. They just write literature out of prompting. And what happens is that most also, there is another effect that I live it, because in our lab we live it. Bear in mind that more than 60% of these or codes are auto-generated, which means there's no human behind it. I mean, this is crazy, which means that you can also only prompt one prompt whatsoever, and then the AI is auto-generated to do one direction to another depending on the tasks that you're addressing it to. It is because it's a universal tech at the fingertips of everybody that I believe it will bring a lot of stress. And not only that, We are assisting in the convergence of technology. Take, for instance, the driverless cars, the autonomous cars.
Mhm.
I was in China lately, and I jumped to a car with a friend. We were in a highway. He was driving without the wheel for 200 kilometers. 2 meters without touching the wheel. Then, as I'm a tech guy, I visited a facility where they handle the highways. So I saw how they handle the image recognition, the weather forecast. I mean, the simulating through quantum simulations also themselves what could happen. And this helps out the new coming of this autonomous car in a very steady but certain way. And all this, as an example, will take away millions of jobs. I mean, look at the call centers today. The call centers today are their value in stock exchange is dropping. Why? Because the call centers are replaced by agentic AIs that do the job for in the place of people. I don't say everybody, but nearly 50% of them. So all those guys are going to be also wiped away everywhere in the world in every language because, as we know, translation is heading to everywhere through AI. Now, what are we going to do? Are we going to sit and watch? In my book, I speak about getting into another dimension of human being because we were handling the four dimensions of Einstein to evaluate your life. And I think there are other dimensions that we have to tap into to get something more than we have today. Another evaluation of life, another meaning of life, another way of exchange. Because bear in mind that AI is a very deflationary technology. We talk about this universal basic income because AI will produce things at such a cheap level so that everybody can buy it. And when you listen to those big guys that are working in big LLMs and a big environment, I mean, the discourse is really, really, really something you have to put in your mind to say, okay, guys, the nature of humankind is going to change because this thing is already 180 IQ level, at an 180 IQ level, which is nearly Einstein's level. And we cannot change it. It will go further and further. And something more about this medical diagnosis that you refer to has a characteristic, the LLMs. They are hallucinating, which means that you cannot trust them 100% for diagnosis. But they have 600 million parameters they're playing with. And if you want to go vertical into the play field of medical science, you will find, we're the diagnostic tool, which will be 99.9% accurate. It won't be based in LLMs. It will be based in an AI that we develop that taps into LLM, bring back data to use it, and then uses LLM to interact with the doctor or with the patient to bring up the diagnosis. And this will help out because, as you said, there are a lot of people waiting for months to get a doctor's appointment, and it's very expensive. So all this will come down to a curve where you will find people being able to get curation out of preventive medicine, like your product or ours, but certainly not through the former very regulated form of medical things. This is why I think that where you say it should be regulated, I say yes, but not over-regulated. It should be properly regulated so that it does not escape human control. That's the essence of what we have to do in the 5 years to come. And the genie is out of the bottle already. I mean, I have software that we cannot control anymore. It's called self-recursive AIs. And this goes directly into telecom lines. It goes into autonomously into computers, makes your own ideas or their own things, and come back to you in a form or another. So what do we do with that? We think, as very companies like us or yours, that AI is something to scrutinize in a very, very deep view for human wellness.
I think it is already being scrutinized a lot, and I do think that it needs to be regulated. But as I said earlier, in order to regulate it appropriately, those regulators need to know technology well. But from what for example, like just as simple as the conversation, the TikTok CEO with the Congress, the questions are so fundamentally like it shows the unawareness of the technology, and it shows the reluctance and ignorance of the regulators to understand the technology. And that's where the problem comes in. If you don't understand something, you can't regulate something. And if you don't regulate something, then you fear of something else, then you are not actually regulating the right thing. But that's human beings. So this is the world we live in.
Yeah, in the book, I go into two different. I propose two different pillars. The first pillar is the ethical pillar. How do we handle AI ethically? I give 12 possibilities of ethics used by developers and political people, etc. Then I consider AI in the lens not only on the lens of technology, but also on the lens of political reactions to AI. I mean, political management of AI, also on societal and social way of handling AI, those drivers that are going to be left alone, and also on a philosophical level of AI. And I think if we go through those routes, those are the people that got to be embedded. I would see philosophical guys handling regulation also. I would see social guys getting into regulators. The political guys, yes, the technological guys also, but they have to do it all together. And my dream is that all the countries, and it's not the way it's taken right now, all the countries bring themselves together to regulate in a wise way, which
that is more ideal than we can ever think. That is more ideal than we can ever think.
Yeah,
countries all getting together and agreeing on something. I mean, nowadays we don't even have countries with stable governments.
Absolutely.
Exactly. It was a very, 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 very topic, very heavy podcast. Latt, thank you so much for being part of this podcast. It was super nice having you. We're gonna let all the information so that people can find you in the description of this video. I hope the audience as well enjoyed this podcast, enjoyed this discussion, and don't forget again to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification button.
Yeah, and let us know where can people find you.
They can find me on Instagram, TikTok at Latt Mansor, LattMansor. They can also go to ketone.com and check out the company and the product. We've got a lot of information on there, all the different athletes that we work with. Just go out there, do your own research, trust your own instincts, and be your own trial and error, because only you know your body the best. So if you're going to try any new supplements, any new lifestyle changes, you are the only person who can tell whether it's working for you or not.
It's a wise conclusion. You have to listen to your body, guys. You have to measure wherever you measure, because we have 8 billion people in the planet and 8 billion different genetic codes, 8 different ways of metabolizing food or ketones or whatever drinks you have. So guys, see you next week, and thank you Latt, thank you Yassine for being helping out this podcast. It was a blast. I loved it.